Welcome to Real World Peaceful Parenting, a podcast for parents that are tired of yelling, threatening, and punishing their kids. Join mom and master certified parent coach Lisa Smith as she gives you actionable, step-by-step strategies that'll help you transform your household from chaos to cooperation. Let's dive in.
Welcome to today's episode. I just love being with you each week, and I am so proud of you for investing this time in your parenting, in your kids, and your family. Well done. Now, if you've been listening for a while, you know I try to bring you tips, ideas, and support that help you create deep connection and cooperation with your kids. And I know that sometimes it's easier to hear a real-world peaceful parenting problem and challenge as if we were working together one-on-one and you were telling me the exact problem you're facing, and then I walk you through the solution. Yeah? So today I have a special treat for you. Hannah, who's been a reoccurring guest on our podcast a few times now, has gone out and crowdsourced some parenting questions for me to answer to help you find the deep connection and cooperation with your kids. Today we dig into the topic of why do my kids ignore me? It's so frustrating. I tell them to do something and they ignore me and then I lose my shiz. Right? Sound familiar? Are you in this camp? Do you have your hand raised? Or are you like, yes, ma'am, let's go? I hear you. This was a big one for me as well. I was convinced, and I mean convinced, that the only way for Malcolm to hear me was by me yelling at him. So in today's episode, I dig into why this isn't true, and I give you a different way to look at or think about yelling and offer up some effective and proven tools that will work instead of yelling. I know. Yes, it's possible to get your kids to do things like put their shoes on and get in the bathtub and get off their phone without yelling. I promise. So listen in as Hannah and I walk through exactly why our kids are ignoring us and what to do about it. Welcome, Hannah. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here again.
Oh, it's so great to have you back. So give us the question that you crowdsourced for the audience to ask me today, and we'll jump in and have some coaching and conversation and inspiration around it.
I love it. Okay. So the question that we are going to talk about today is being ignored constantly by my girls, ages 10, 6, and 3. And I know they heard me and understood what I asked. Can ignoring be addressed more? I really lose it when constantly ignored after I've asked, explained, told, repeated my reason, then lose it when I'm still ignored.
Yes, great question. And being ignored by our children, or honestly anybody, pretty much feels awful and nobody likes it, right?
Right.
Yeah. So the thing is, there's a lot going on here. So read the question for us again.
Okay. Being ignored constantly by my girls, ages 10, 6, and 3. And I know they heard me and understood what I asked.
Okay, pause right there. Okay. Being ignored by my girls, and I know they heard me. Okay. First part of the question that we want to address. Mama, they did not hear you. And let me explain how I know this. First of all, let me say, even just entertaining the thought, I know they heard me, is going to trigger you into dysregulation. Anytime we think the thought, I know they heard me, I know she's being disrespectful, I know he's being difficult, I know fill in the blank about anybody, we're setting ourselves up to be triggered because we do not know. And I know my girls are ignoring me is the perfect opportunity to storm, because it doesn't feel good to know that you're being ignored by somebody. And the truth is you don't know. And let me give you some evidence to support this. Kids are not multitaskers, right? We talk about this, Hannah, all the time inside the Hive. And it's important to be reminded. I have to remind myself of this all the time, right? I have to remind myself of developmentally what my 17-year-old is capable of. I also have to remind his dad what he is and isn't capable of as well. Because it's very easy for our brains to assume our kids are capable of more than they are. So these 3 young girls, what I know is at their age, at their stage of brain development, they do not have a fully developed prefrontal cortex, which is what's required to be a multitasker. And so starting off the bat, I know they listen to me. I encourage this parent to just never think this again, because the kids are single taskers and they're doing whatever they're doing. So if I'm staring off into space, daydreaming, coloring, reading a book, picking up toys, eating my lunch, thinking about my day, that is all I am doing. And my brain is not scanning the universe for what else is my mom telling me to do. On top of it, if she's telling me to do things that are not FUN, because remember, as a kid, I'm hardwired for FUN, then my brain isn't immediately cueing in to what she's saying. So I really think that this parent can have a complete transformation by dropping the thought, I know they hear me.
Yeah, that's so good and so key. Yeah. I mean, even, she said the ages 10, 6, and 3, that's such a good range, of children. But as you said, developmentally, that prefrontal cortex, it's just not ready yet. So you're so right.
Yes. All right. What's the next part of it? I know they're 10, 6, and 3. I know they hear me. Mm-hmm. And
so she had asked if ignoring could be addressed more, which we're doing. I really lose it when constantly ignored after I've asked, explained, told, and repeated my reason. Okay. Then lose it when I'm still ignored.
Perfect. Ask, explain,
repeated,
and then lose it.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a great example of an ineffective pattern interrupter. So back to, I love that we're having this conversation, Hannah. This is so great. And I know that so many people are benefiting from this. In order to get someone's attention, we perform things called pattern interrupters, right? We do this adult to adult. You work in an office. I knock on your door. You say, come in. That's pattern interrupter. I walk into my favorite place in the whole world, Starbucks. The first thing they say is, welcome to Starbucks. That's a pattern interrupter. You go to buy something. Someone says, how can I help you? Right? We greet each other. Hello, how's it going? I see someone, I run into you at Trader Joe's and I go, Hannah, how's it going? You look up from your list. These are pattern interrupters and we're pretty good at them. Most of us, adult to adult. Where we're not great at it sometimes is adult to child, because we're trying to perform adult to adult pattern interrupters and they don't work, right? Let's say you and I are away for a girls' weekend and I go in the kitchen to get a brownie and I call out, Hannah, you want a brownie? You're probably going to hear me for a couple of reasons. You have a fully developed prefrontal cortex. You're trained to scan the universe for input. You hear me calling and your brain switches gears quickly and tunes into what you're telling me, right? Plus, I'm going in the kitchen for a brownie and let's be honest.
Let's be honest.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So now let's fast forward to this parent, 10, 6, and 3. She's in the kitchen, getting the breakfast dishes kind of tidied up, and she's ready for the kids to put her shoes on. And she calls out from the kitchen, girls, get your shoes on. That is, for most children, an ineffective pattern interrupter, especially if you do it one time with the expectation of my kid is going to listen and comply. It's not just listen, but they're going to listen and get it done. That's a 2-step process, by the way, not a 1, right? So she calls out from the kitchen, put your shoes on. She looks out a few minutes later. They're not doing anything. Now she tells them again to put the shoes on and she goes into explain mode. Well, they didn't hear the first part of it anyway. So all of this work she's doing to ask, to explain, right? Then maybe she goes into yelling mode, comes out into the living room and, girls, get your shoes on now. And they look up. Her brain registers that yelling is the only way to get her kids to listen.
Yes.
Okay, here's the deal. Yelling is a pattern interrupter. It is. And in some households, it can be effective. Not the best pattern interrupter to create connection and cooperation. It creates more of compliance and command, right? I command you to do this, and so you comply. I don't love it in real world peaceful parenting as a go-to pattern interrupter, Now, certainly if your kid's about to run out into the street with a moving car, it's a very useful, effective pattern interrupter. Your child is running down the stairs with the hands in his pockets, running with scissors, running around the pool while the, cement is slippery. All useful, very useful pattern interrupters. Trying to get the shoes on in the morning, probably not the best pattern interrupter, because now I've yelled at you and we get in the car to go to school and I feel bad now because I yelled and lost my shiz and stormed alongside you, and maybe you stormed as well. So a more effective pattern interrupter might be come out of the kitchen, go into the living room, be in close proximity with your kids, call their name, Hannah, 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 Hannah. Finally, you say, yes, Mom. Hannah, can you please put your shoes on? Okay. Hannah, what did I just ask you to do? I have no idea. Okay, great. Hannah, can you put your shoes on, please? Yes. What did I ask you to do? Put my shoes on. Yes. Awesome. Can you get it done? Yes. That is a much more effective sequence of events than the pattern interrupter that was described, where you ask and explain and then get dysregulated and then lose it. That doesn't feel good to anybody. And it doesn't really model the calm pattern interrupter that we want our kids to follow, right? So then later down that day, the 10-year-old wants the toy the 6-year-old has. She's probably also using the same pattern interrupter that you're modeling for her.
Yeah. That is so true. And that really reminds me, with my own kids, I think when you first told me this about how they don't hear you, I kind of didn't believe it. There was a part of me that was like, I know they heard me, but it's so true. Sometimes I'll be right next to my son. And as you said, the staring off into space, he's not even doing anything. And I'm like, Miles, nothing, no response. Like, Miles. And then it's like, oh, you're talking to me. And it's a conversation when you're right looking at them and they're looking at you and you're saying, can you please put your shoes on? What did I ask you to do? Can you do this? You're asking them questions, you're engaging them and really creating and aiding in that connection, because as you said, they'll copy you. And so when I'm in the middle of talking to my mom or an adult, Carmela, who's my older one, will come up to me and she puts her hand really quietly on my hand. And she's learned not to just interrupt Mom or from the other room, Mom, because again, that doesn't feel good. And when I'm done with my sentence, I look over at her and I say, yes, Carmela. So that's kind of that's kind of what we do in my house. But it's like you said, I wouldn't like her to yell from across the room, Mom, and ask me a question. So why would I assume that it's going to A, work, and B, feel good if I'm yelling at her from across the house to put her shoes on, which I wasn't connecting before I started peaceful parenting. I was the mom in the kitchen who expected that I would yell it and then they would line up in a row with their shoes on, ready to go. So,
well, think about this. It's a good point, Hannah. When we're in the kitchen yelling, all of us, we're barking out orders. Put your shoes on. I mean, maybe we're even being nice. Hannah, can you put your shoes on? We're expecting them to hear, register, obey, and get it done right then. That's a lot brain developmentally for a 10, 6, and 3-year-old to accomplish on their own the first time they're asked with no pattern interrupter. Right. And when we do this as parents, we're setting ourselves up for failure. We're setting ourselves up for frustration, which is the gap between expectation and reality, right? Let's visit this.
Yes.
So I'm in the kitchen. I say, put your shoes on. We got to go. And I expect they're just going to do it. That gap between the two is the equivalent of my frustration that I come in the living room and they're still all doing what they were doing. Mm-hmm. I cannot express this enough, how single task and single focused kids' brains are. If you look in a classroom, let's contrast what we're doing at home versus what goes on in a classroom, right? And teachers, all my teachers out there, y'all know this, like it's just so natural to go into a classroom, a preschool, a sports team. My son has been teaching at a basketball camp all summer with second graders. It's so great. He's like, oh, Mom, now I understand why you do what you do. Mm-hmm. Like trying to get second graders' attention is really difficult. So we talked about pattern interrupters, right? So now he has this little clap game he does where he claps 3 times when he wants their attention and then they clap 3 times back. And it takes 4, 5, or 6 times for all 10 of his kids to be clapping 3 times back. And then he knows he has all of their attention, and then he makes the request, right? So I like to say we need to get their attention before we make the request. This works. Again, back to the classroom. If you watch, let's say there's 22 kids in a classroom and they're all sitting around in groups, pods of 3, reading books to each other. Doesn't matter what grade we're talking about, second, fourth, sixth, right? They're all sitting around in groups of 3 and it's time to go to lunch. The teacher doesn't just say, hey, come on, everybody, put your books away and line up and go to lunch, right? It would be chaos. It would be pandemonium. Instead, she does a cute little pattern interrupter like 1, 2, 3. And then she waits. And like the first time through, 4 or 5 of them go, eyes on me. And then she does it again. And then 8 of them do it. And then she does it again. And then 15 have caught on. And then she does it a 4th time. And all 22 kids are now looking up at her going, eyes on me, when she says 1, 2, 3. And then she says, okay, when I give you the signal, you're all going to put your books away and line up single file in line to go to lunch. And the probability of success is so much higher when she knows she has their attention before making the request. By the way, I recommend if your school already has a pattern interrupter that your teacher's using, bring it home and use it at home because your kid is getting trained 4 or 5 or 6 times a day with that pattern interrupter. Right? Now let's talk about high school real quick. What do they do in high school? They ring bells, right? It's time to finish first period and go on to second period. They ring the bell. The bell is the pattern interrupter. The teacher finishes up and dismisses them and all the kids file out. Then there might be another bell with 2 minutes to go. They get a 10-minute break, right? Then there might be another little like shorter bell, like ring, ring. And then they know, okay, I got to get to class. And then there's a final bell, ring. That's like, okay, this period 2 is started. These are pattern interrupters for high school kids.
Yes.
Right. So this is how we move large volumes of underdeveloped brains around and get them to cooperate. We can take a page from that lesson book and utilize the same process, effective and connected process at home to get maximum cooperation.
Yes, exactly. I've done the same thing for my daughter. I found out what they said at school and I do it and she gets all excited because it reminds her of school, especially in the summertime. And then her brother feels cool because he gets to do what the school kids do. And again, kind of like you said with the younger kids and what your son is doing, again, it's also kind of making it FUN. Malcolm claps his hands 3 times and the little kids say, oh, time to clap, something to do with my hands, something fun. And I think that's really helpful. And I kind of want to touch on how you said there's so much going on when you yell from the kitchen and make your request. And I think one aspect of that, especially for me, is that I understand there's a time constraint. So I assume that the urgency in my voice is conveying, okay, time to get your shoes on. My mind is saying, I have to go to my mom's. When after I go to my mom's, I'm going to go to the store and I have to do this all by 11:30. I'm expecting that they somehow understand all these unspoken things because I get it. So then when I go in there and the shoes aren't on, there's a small part of me that's like, are you kidding me? Don't you understand what we have to do today? And again, it's just taking those steps back and realizing, again, they truly don't. They're not giving you a hard time. They just don't understand that. And especially if I haven't said that, it's, kind of wild of me to expect that they would get that. So if I know, okay, I have to go in 5 minutes, I make it FUN. So it's, my son loves to count. So it's like, can you get your shoes on in under 10 seconds or, something reasonable, or can you get to the car who can get there faster or something to make it FUN because that way they don't have to worry about the timing. And I know that it's still going to get done.
Awesome. I love that you shared that because that is 100% true. And I've never thought about that. Yes. You're in the kitchen thinking, oh Lord, I'm running out of time. I got to get all this done. I hope I remember to get lemon juice at the grocery store. Right. And I didn't write everything down. I'll try to keep it all in my brain and juggle it around. And whoa, we really need to get going. And so you say, come on, we've got to go get your shoes on. And in your brain, you're thinking that just communicated to them the urgency, the stress, the time limit. I'm really serious now. Let's get going. And they have no idea that you just said that. I mean, they probably didn't even hear you, but even if they did, 10, 6, and 3 are not picking up what you're putting down. right? And they don't really care. They don't, they don't care that you're stressed. They don't care that we're running out of time. Their brains are not developmentally appropriate to care the way you care. They do not have a sense of all the factors going into this, the time, the commitment, the things that have to get done, the tick, 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 tick of the clock. And so I agree with you 100%. And then on top of it, if you're super stressed and you're making it less and less and less fun by the day, and then if you're making it less and less and less FUN by the minute, we're not making progress. We're not connecting. And if we're not connected, we're not going to get cooperation. Right. I think what you're also saying, Hannah, is in your mind, you're trying to connect through the stress, right? Come on, guys, we got to go. I got a lot to do. Work with me here. Let's get it done. Are you kidding me? The problem is that kids do not connect through stress. They don't.
Right. And then they're confused. It's like, why are you suddenly yelling at me? What did I even do wrong? They're just sitting there and, it's kind of comical when you look at it in hindsight, because they really don't get it. And they're like, this lady just likes to yell, yes. Or whatever.
Okay. Now let's talk about this. Now, maybe this mom is going to say, okay, Lisa, I like your ideas. This sounds great, but are you kidding me? I don't have time. You know how busy we are on the weekends? I don't have time to go in the living room and squat down and call their name and ask them what I said. Oh, and I hear this a lot from parents, but the truth is you do have the time. If you have the time to ask a bunch, explain, get upset, and storm alongside them, what I know for sure, if you have all the time to do all that, not to mention the guilt you're going to feel afterwards, after you drop them off at school and drive away, if you have time for all that, you have time to connect before making the request. And here's the thing. Connection is the thing that leads to cooperation. So when you leave the kitchen and go to the living room, it's like a 401k. You're investing in the cooperation you're going to ask for by connecting with your kids, right? When you go in and say, Miles, buddy, I need your attention for a minute. Can you look at me? Oh, yes, mommy. Miles, can you put your shoes on? You're going to get so much further. And you've seen this, you've experienced this, you can speak to this. You just get so much further, not only in that moment, but in the long run, because you're creating this connection between you and your kid. So you're not only getting a payoff now, right? You're not only getting a return on your investment now, but you're getting a dividend down the road because you're creating all this connection that leads to cooperation, not 100% of the time, certainly not guaranteeing. But you're going to get more cooperation than you're getting making commands from the kitchen.
Yes, that is so true. And for those of you listening who haven't experienced that yet, it is actual magic. I mean, I can really speak to this. We really, really struggled with my son. That's when we reached out to Lisa in the beginning. We were really struggling with him on all cylinders. And I have a perfect quick example of this from this morning. He and I went on a date to Chick-fil-A, which he loves. And he loved being in that little play area. And I knew that we had to leave in about 10 minutes, and he loves timers. So I said, okay, Miles, I'm going to set a timer for 5 minutes. Again, I in my head realized it might take a little bit longer. So I'm going to set a shorter alarm. That way I can stay regulated if it takes a little bit longer. And he doesn't need to know all these things. I just know I need to leave in 10 minutes. Okay. So we set a 5-minute timer. He agrees to it. And we've built this mutual trust. And I've followed through with what I've said I was going to do. As a recovering permissive parent, I've held limits. I've done the work for a while now. So the timer went off and he just looked so dismayed. He just said, "Oh, Mom, do we have to go?" And I said, "I know you're having such a fun time, honey, but the timer went off and we do have to go." And as he was kind of complaining, "Oh, I wish we didn't have to go," he was getting his shoes. He was walking towards me with his shoes saying, "I really wish we didn't have to go." He's putting them on each foot. He's saying, "Can we come back again?" But he's actually cooperating as he's still struggling with the emotions of wanting to leave, because he trusts me and he knows that A, it's safe to share his feelings, and B, when Mom says it's time to go and when the timer goes off, it's time to go. So we were able to leave in like 7 minutes. And I was just kind of floored when I was in the car driving to realize that this was the same child who we had to drag literally kicking and screaming out of places before. And he was still allowed to be upset and he was allowed to not want to go, but he was cooperating because we have a connection and we trust each other.
That's such a great example. Thank you. Yes. And also I really love that you have wrapped your brain around, I need to set the timer for 5 minutes rather than 10. I don't need to push this to the last minute, which is going to dysregulate me. And I can give us some wiggle room. So there was a lot of tolerance and patience and understanding for the storming while he was putting the shoes on.
Yes.
And you didn't have thoughts like, come on, buddy, get your shoes on. I gave you the 10 minutes and this is how you pay me. We're not going to come back. Or you didn't start storming alongside him or take personally that he didn't want to go because you didn't push the envelope to the last second and stress yourself out as a parent.
Yeah. All tools I've learned from listening to your podcast and working with you. So,
so great, Hannah. That's so great. Well, hopefully we helped this parent understand that this requires a different approach. It requires a little bit of proactiveness and some connection. It requires a little bit of working on our thoughts. My kids didn't hear me. It requires understanding what they're capable of. What is the maximum they're capable of developmentally at this age? And that has nothing to do with intelligence. It just has to do with pure brain development. What are my kids capable of? And if you don't know, dig into it, look it up, figure it out. It's so helpful to understand. My 3-year-old's only capable of this much, my 6-year-old this much, and my 10-year-old is still only. At 10 years old, the prefrontal cortex is not fully developed until 25. So that 10-year-old oldest daughter of hers is still 15 years away from a fully developed prefrontal cortex. So understanding they don't hear you. They need a pattern interrupter. They need help being successful. It's worth the connection to get the cooperation, like your Chick-fil-A story with your son, Miles. And hopefully this is really helpful to everybody listening, wrapping our brain around, why don't my kids listen, right? It's not that they're giving you a hard time. It's that they're having a hard time in listening, follow through on the commands and being successful. So use a different method, right? Albert Einstein said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So if every day I'm standing in the kitchen, barking out orders, it's not working, let's try something different. Go into the living room, get their attention, make sure you have the attention before you make the request and then get confirmation of making the request.
Yeah. And I've mentioned this before, but for those of us who are adults and still single taskers, me, I know it's not everyone. My husband can do 18 things at once. God bless him. I cannot. I just kind of want to give a little hope because sometimes when I listened to the podcast in the very beginning, I would get a little bit overwhelmed. So I just kind of want to say, if it's helpful to just start with one thing, maybe just finding the pattern interrupter and trying that for a day, I just want to really commend any work, any effort that you put in. You're here, so let's just commend you for that. But just for some of us who might get a little overwhelmed, I just want to say that, it's so possible and you can break it down into as small of a bite-sized piece as you need. And you don't need to change everything overnight. It's not most likely not going to change overnight, and that's okay. And I just kind of wanted to give a little love to those people who might be feeling overwhelmed and just say that you can absolutely do this. Nothing's broken. No one's, been ruined, and you can do it one step at a time.
Beautiful. Good advice, Anna. Good practical advice from someone who's had a massive transformation in her own parenting. Awesome. Thank you so much, Hannah, for being here and bringing us the question. Hopefully all of you listening found it useful. And until we meet again, I'm wishing you peaceful parenting. Thank you so much for listening today. I want to personally invite you to head over to thepeacefulparent.com/welcome and sign up for my free Peaceful Parenting mini course. You'll find everything you need to get started on the path to peaceful parenting just waiting for you over there at www.thepeacefulparent.com/welcome. Can't wait for you to get started.
Thanks for listening to Real World Peaceful Parenting. If you want more info on how you can transform your parenting, visit thepeacefulparent.com. See you soon.